elegantly off one shoulder. Her dark hair was swept back into a loose, sophisticated knot. The dog immediately abandoned the toy truck and trotted back to her side, sitting at attention. Evelyn's sharp, calculating eyes, the color of dark amber, swept over Thomas's yard, taking in the slightly peeling paint of his deck, the scattered children's toys, and finally landing on Thomas himself. He suddenly felt painfully aware of his ill-fitting, faded trousers and wrinkled white dress shirt. "I apologize," Evelyn said, her tone polite but guarded. "The landscapers damaged the invisible fence wiring near the property line this morning. Duke took advantage of the blind spot. I hope he didn't startle you." "No, it's fine," Thomas said, clearing his throat and self-consciously attempting to smooth down the front of his shirt. He was just investigating a dump truck. No harm done. Evelyn lingered for a moment, her gaze locked on him. Usually, their interactions consisted of a brief nod if they happened to pull into their respective driveways at the same time. But today, she didn't immediately turn away. She studied his face, her perfectly arched eyebrows drawing together in a slight frown. "You look like you're heading to an execution," she observed coolly. The bluntness of the statement caught Thomas off guard. He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Close. A wedding." "An unhappy occasion, then?" she asked, stepping slightly closer to the fence, her curiosity seemingly piqued. Thomas hesitated. He was a private man, and pouring his heart out to the notoriously ruthless neighbor he barely knew was absurd. But there was something strangely disarming about her directness. She wasn't looking at him with pity. She was analyzing a data point. "My former best friend is marrying my ex-wife's sister," Thomas found himself saying, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "My ex-wife will be there. With the man she left me for. A man who makes sure to remind me of my tax bracket every time we breathe the same air." Evelyn leaned slightly against the wooden fence post, her amber eyes narrowing as she processed the information. "And you're going alone?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because David was my best friend, and if I don't go, they win. They get to say I'm hiding, that I'm broken." Thomas looked down at his scuffed leather shoes. "Though, looking at this suit, I think I'm going to prove them right anyway." Evelyn's gaze slowly dragged down his outfit, assessing the cheap fabric and the poor fit with an expert eye. She didn't offer a polite lie or a comforting platitude. "It's a terrible suit," she said flatly. Thomas winced. "Thank you for the honesty." "Honesty is the only currency that matters, Mr. Harding," she replied, using his surname, though they had never formally introduced themselves. She knew who he was. Of course she did. She likely had her security team vet the entire street before buying the property. "It's Thomas," he said. "Evelyn," she replied seamlessly. She reached down, idly stroking the Doberman's sleek head, though her eyes never left Thomas. "I've watched you over the last year, Thomas, from my terrace. I see you out here teaching your daughter how to ride a bicycle. I see you building snowmen in the dark before you go to work, so she has a surprise when she wakes up. You are a man of substance." Thomas was entirely stunned into silence. He had assumed the billionaire next door viewed him as nothing more than a minor eyesore on her property line. To hear that she had been quietly observing his fatherhood and respecting it sent a strange, warm shockwave through his chest. "The people you are going to see tonight," Evelyn continued, her voice dropping into a register of cold disdain, "the ones who gauge a man's worth by the label inside his collar or the size of his portfolio. They are empty vessels. I deal with them every day in boardrooms. They are parasites who feed on the insecurities of better people. Do not let them feed on you tonight." She stood up straight, the brief moment of neighborly intimacy evaporating as she slipped back into the persona of the untouchable CEO. "Fix your posture, Thomas. You have nothing to apologize for. Have a good evening." With that, she turned on her heel and walked away, the massive Doberman falling perfectly into step beside her. Thomas stood on his deck for a long time after she vanished behind the trees. Her words echoed in his mind, providing a strange, steel-like reinforcement to his frayed nerves. He went back inside, picked up his tie, and finally managed to knot it perfectly. He pulled on the oversized jacket, squared his shoulders, just as she had instructed, and walked out the front door. He was going into the lion's den, but for the first time in 3 years, he felt a flicker of defiance. The Fairmont Copley Plaza was a cathedral of opulence. As Thomas handed his 10-year-old sedan over to the white-gloved valet, ignoring the subtle sneer the young man gave the vehicle, he felt the fragile armor of Evelyn's advice begin to crack. He walked into the grand ballroom, and the noise hit him like a physical blow. The room was dripping in crystal chandeliers, massive towers of white orchids, and gold-leafed table settings. A string quartet played softly in the corner, entirely drowned out by the roaring chatter of Boston's elite. It didn't take long for the gauntlet to begin. Thomas grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing tray and tried to blend